got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain, keep on working, open curtains. Haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is my road, let's camera action, I'm ready to go.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHH LP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.
Good morning, everybody. And we're starting a little late, and that's I could blame it on Zoom, or I could blame it on myself, I could blame it on the internet, or I could blame it on Alexander Graham Bell. But we have technologies and innovations that sometimes we rely upon too much. In fact, today's show is going to talk about things we've relied upon from a horse and buggy standpoint, from a bicycle standpoint, from a mule standpoint, from how do we get around, how have we gotten around in civilization in general, but I won't be so metaphorical. We're going to start about how do we get around and move and stay healthy here in New Haven in terms of active transit and active transportation, and just to be mobile and healthy. So Alicia Santilli is with us this morning, and Susan is with us this morning, Susan Harris. And before we get into titles, both Alicia and Susan, I think, would agree that if you combine the number of years that both of them have been concerned about and actively concerned and not only concerned, but behaving in a way to make New Haven a better place, combine their years of experience, we're looking at maybe 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years of commitment. That means, Susan, you're 16, and Alicia, that might mean you must be, I don't know, you found the fountain of youth. But the fact remains that these ladies are joining us in terms of an event that's coming up. And Alicia and Susan, let's start with this, because for radio people, they come and go and they can't really perhaps spend a total 55 minutes. But there's an event coming up in July, and then another event in the fall about how can everyone kind of have the opportunity to really kind of influence, share, commune, express their opinion without being censored about the future New Haven from a transportation standpoint. And for me, that means a future New Haven from a health standpoint, from a educational standpoint, you name it. I mean, just everything is involved with not being hit by a car and not getting asthma and pollution and pedestrian problems and sidewalks and handicaps and bus transportation and et cetera, et cetera. So Alicia, kind of lead us off real quick about the event that's upcoming. We're not sure whether I'm sure if it's going to be inside or outside, but nonetheless, you'll be able to participate. So important, coming up in July and then also in the fall.
Having us, highlighting. So I work with an organization called CARE. One of the things we're on improve health in New Haven is figure out how to build it better for folks all across New Haven walking. We've been working with the City of New Haven and their transportation department for a few years now. And we are collaborating around developing what we're calling the Safe Routes for All citywide plan. This is a master plan for improving every street, every corner, every crosswalk. And we are at this really critical juncture right now where we really need to get input from the community, from every neighborhood in New Haven, and especially the neighborhoods that feel like they've been neglected in terms of street infrastructure improvements, sidewalk improvements. We've been working actively over the past couple of months to try and get grassroots community input. We've done some walking and biking surveys in neighborhoods to try and really assess the quality of streets. Susan's been really involved with that aspect of our work. And our upcoming opportunity, so we always have the opportunity to provide feedback on See, Click, Fix. So See, Click, Fix, everything that people report in terms of problems with their streets, sidewalks, safety in terms of crossing the street and street lights and things like that, or where cars are speeding too fast. If you put that into See, Click, Fix, it gets directly inputted into the transportation department kind of data, and they will see it. So that's something that's always available to folks, but I know that some people struggle with and not everybody has online access. So there's an upcoming public workshop, which Tom was referring to in July. The date and time, TBD, and some of the details, we'd really like to see if we can host something in person. So we're working out those details. This will be our second public workshop to get input from the. So we're taking all of the data and input that we've collected so far, that our collaborators collected so far, and we're going to be presenting a draft of the plan for community feedback and say, like, nope, you got that wrong, you got this right, you got this piece. So we really encourage as much participation as possible. And then the second opportunity will hopefully be sometime in December. This plan will get passed by the Board of Alders. Well, hopefully, that's the goal. We would like to present this plan to the Board of Alders, have it get adopted officially. What that means is that it provides a blueprint for the city. Anytime there's any type of development being done and streets repaved or intersections being redone, they will have this official plan that every department, every contractor needs to look at and say, oh, okay, the community said they want a raised crosswalk. So this will really lay out for the next 5, 10, 20 years how every street in New Haven should be built so that they're safer for walking, biking, and bus.
Perfect. And we have about 45 minutes, so we can kind of just talk casually and not feel rushed. But Susan, why is this important? And if I can share with folks a little bit about why you've been committed to being engaged in community development, community improvement, and some of the projects you've been involved with before. And I say that because when I think about your food situation, and we met at one of the leadership events at Yale and Health Fellows, et cetera, all this is so related, but share with folks a little bit, about your accolades, because people don't always don't get their roses when they should. So sometimes it's after the fact. And then to share with us about why being involved with the making New Haven a safer place is so important.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me. I'm a member of Witnesses to Hunger New Haven, which is a advocacy group. We deal with food insecurity through legislative action. We march, we protest. We're working right now on SNAP reform, trying to update the Thrifty Food Plans bill, which is the basis for SNAP and hasn't been changed since 2006, 15 years ago. And if you think about food prices then and food prices now, there's a big difference. And trying to raise the poverty level to 200%, which will give more resources to people who need them. And we're also involved in the school meals program. We're advocating for children to be fed 3 times a day, 365 a year. And right now we're getting ready to go into the summer meals program for the summer, and the school system is having problems because, they're short staffing and, budgetary constraints. But we're helping with that as we can as well. As far as Safe Foods for All, I'm a commuter. I don't drive. I rely on the bus or walking. And for years, the bus has been going downhill as far as service, as far as, just as far as common respect dealing with, passengers, getting on the bus. If it's wet, they the minute you scan your card, they take off. That's a one simple problem, but it goes further than that. The bus stops themselves, a lot of them aren't designated as bus stops. I know out here by me, between Whately Avenue and Fitch Street along Blake Street, there's one designated bus stop, one that has a sign that says bus stop, but there are several spaces during that from Fitch to Blake that, I mean, from Fitch to Wales that to stop, but it's always
Yeah.
confusion because it's not clearly marked. And also, bus shelters.
Mhm.
There are not enough bus shelters to go. So that's a start. There's a whole lot more, but
Well, yeah, and we're going to dig into it and even have perhaps another conversation in the fall, if not in August, just to kind of let people know that it all is so interrelated. I mean, even as you were talking, Susan and Alicia, when you were talking, my mind flashed to when Susan mentioned about the schools, that the school buses, and whether even students walking to school or not walking to school, but just the pollution on the school buses. But Alicia, I wanted to ask you, when you mentioned planning, my mind went to, some people know that we had the 9 squares, that when they see pictures of the first New Haven, there were these 9 squares. So there was an initial design about New Haven and what it's supposed to look like. Susan, I'm pretty sure you've seen that map as well of the 9th square, the 9 squares. It seems to me that in some way we're back. This is another opportunity for us to kind of reconfigure, redesign, but in a real substantive, structural way, to use the Biden thing in terms of an infrastructure way, to designing another, I guess it's like 15,000 squares now, but we're beyond 9 squares. But it strikes me as this is that opportunity. This is not like a mundane throwing things against the wall or going to a retreat or something. So just talk about that, the sustainability and the long-term impact.
Yeah, I think sometimes, myself included, community members get frustrated with the idea of creating plans all the time, but not getting us to action. So I really hope that community members will see that this is an opportunity to really drive change, literally at the street level, by having this blueprint in place. And so, yeah, you're exactly right, Tom. Like, in a lot of ways, like, everything comes full circle. Many of you know, during urban renewal in the mid-century, traffic was really designed from, quite frankly, a racist perspective in urban cores to get white people in and out of the cities very quickly as they were commuting just to come here for jobs. So the focus was really on, getting white populations to leave cities, go back and forth from suburban areas, back and forth. And so, the prime example of a deconstruction of a neighborhood in city streets is Route 34, which, I don't know, 50, 60 years later, here we are spending millions of dollars to reconfigure that area so that we are bringing it back to a more walkable, bikeable, busable community. So that's a prime example of where we've sort of veered off on the wrong path and need to get ourselves back on. So having this plan, hopefully, will allow us to take action at many different neighborhoods. And I hope that residents will know that if this gets adopted by the city of New Haven, we then have a tool by which we can hold the city accountable for making those changes. We can refer back to the plan that was adopted and passed by the elders and continue to point back to it and say, no, this is the plan that you set out for my still have not acted on.
And Susan, Alicia has mentioned, has played the race card. Normally the burden is on you and I, people of color, or brown or black people, to play the race card. So Alicia's put it on the table. Talk and I half joke and I could actually be crying and saying this, but she's raised the issue of the intentionality of people in the past, and have those intentionalities even changed? Although we want to speak the talk, and now we want to walk the walk, bicycle the walk, and ride the walk, etc. But can we be better as we kind of try to decide what our collective futures might look like, particularly in terms of planning, in terms of streets and sidewalks and bus routes, etc. So any thoughts about that? And this is more of a philosophical question, and the people should know that our shows are live, and sometimes I do chat with guests ahead of time, but we don't have a script, a specific script. So But Susan, what I'm basically asking, essentially trying to get you to want you to consider sharing, is where is your faith claim, your philosophical claim, your faith that we as humans can kind of act for everybody's better good? Because you reference SNAP and also the political dimension. I'm curious about what keeps you driving, about how you perceive people's intentions, and how you remain committed for us exercising our better angels.
Well, tomorrow's another day. There's always hope to look forward to in the future. Things can only get better, especially after the past, almost 2 years that we've gone through. That was a pulling together in New Haven as far as food and food policy coming together, to feed the city of New Haven. And, in my opinion, we did an excellent job. The thing of it is to keep it going forward past the pandemic, to keep the standards that were brought up, excuse me, when people weren't as mobile as they're becoming again, to keep New Haven fed. And there's still a lot to do. As far as the infrastructure and all that that you were speaking about, I remember my uncle used to work for the redevelopment in the city of New Haven under Richard C. Lee, which is when all this, Route 34 corridor and all that started, and was never completed. Yes. Which is we jumped forward 60, 70, almost 60 years, and they're trying it again. So I have my doubts, as far as getting it completed, but it's better late than never, I guess. But I'm skeptical to see what actually is going to be done now. Yes. That this much later in time. But the plans look good. But as far as there's a lot more people in New Haven. New Haven is a lot less crowded as far as the streets, the traffic, and making the changes that they're talking about is going to be very difficult. But as Alicia said, after the next 10, 20 years. So.
And I appreciate your answer. It was tremendous. It was well phrased, very diplomatic, I might say, which I love, because we had to learn, I think, to be more diplomatic. I had a conversation with my wife this morning about being more diplomatic. But what keeps you still, when you see the glass, do you see the glass half full, half empty? What keeps you motivated? The reason I want to kind of linger on this point, because we see people are kind of, in some point being depressed, or just fading out, or just giving up, or not getting their vaccine, or conspiracy theories. The environment of information is so controversial and divisive. For those of us that are trying to keep our eyes on the prize, such as yourself, I always like to ask folks, what helps you keep your eye on the prize? What helps you see that North Star, as Frederick Douglass would say?
The willingness of different community partners to come together, that have the same, aims and goals, coming from different perspectives. As a member of Witnesses to Hunger, a majority of our group is lived experience, not necessarily from the public sector, but the two intercede in their aims to keep making New Haven better, to feed New Haven, to keep, New Haven children fed, to keep neighborhoods from being, I know it's not the PC term now, but food deserts, which there are many of New Haven. Think about the number of grocery stores and where they are, and go from there. And, just getting fresh fruits and vegetables to neighbors that don't necessarily, can't necessarily afford them on SNAP, going back to the SNAP reform. And it's, it's all connected.
Yes, all connected. And Alicia, actually, I want to pose the same question to you in the context of, restate your title and mention the various programs that CARE is involved with, because it's important people to know I'll say the intersectionality of what CARE is involved with. And some people would consider some of the efforts to be even disparate and not be able to see the connections between, but it's really fascinating. Then I want to jump to CDC, and then Susan, I want to come back to you. I want to ask you a personal question about, if you're willing to share, who you referenced your uncle, was it? And what was his first name? Your uncle's first name.
Oh, my uncle's name is Robert Jackson.
So yeah, I want to reference his involvement with back in the Bill Donahue days and redevelopment. But Alicia, same question to you. But what keeps you optimistic and how kind of care? I mean, it's a job. A job is a job is a job. A job can wear you down. A job, any job can wear you down, whether you're on the plantation or whether you're at the White House or the out in the fields. But also, the care mission is so. I want people to see it to be so inspiring. So kind of weave in those two things in terms of what when your husband sees your check, he says, "Oh, thanks for working," but also there's a sense of self-fulfillment that you probably derive, and then how the the care mission is so interrelated with various initiatives and programs.
So I'm definitely a glass half full kind of person. I tend to be pretty optimistic. So fortunately, I think that helps to keep sane in some of this work, because I definitely notice as I get older, I get a little bit more cynical, and frustrated and not seeing change happen fast enough. But at the same time, what really inspires me, first and foremost, for some reason, a mission around social justice has just been in my bones since I was a little girl. So I've just always been to making change in the world. And so this work has been an amazing intersection for me. I have a little bit of background in health equity. Really been a great intersection of those passions for me. And I love New Haven. Lived here for 17 or 18 years now. I know not nearly as long, but it's become a chosen place for us to live and community. So a combination of all of those things is what drives me. So in our work doing health and working collaboratively across the city, I think what really drives me is the power of collaboration. There is a lot of really amazing work going on in New Haven, and so to be a part of any of the work related to social justice is just very fulfilling. In terms of our approach at CARE, so we have a lengthy mission, but in short, our mission is to improve health in New Haven. We're specifically focused on low-income populations of color that experience health disparities. COVID exposed for one of the first times nationally, finally, something we were talking about, common Susan, well, for a really long time, that there are great health disparities when we look at white people compared to Black and brown people and low-income populations, even white low-income populations. So our work at CARE, again, our mission to improve health, we've mostly focused on chronic disease prevention. So I know that it often might seem like a little bit of a mismatch. Like if we're working on chronic disease prevention, why are we working on an active transportation point in the city? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And it's really our focus on policies. So taking a more global view of our communities and understanding what assets and barriers are in the way or facilitating being able to healthy behavior. So we want people to be able to walk to work and create a community where it's easy to walk to work or ride their bike to work or even take the bus, because to take the bus, like Susan, I don't know, maybe it takes you 5 or 10 minutes to get to your bus stop, and then you walk another 5 or 10 minutes to get to the final destination. All of that adds up in terms of chronic disease. So our view is often around systems, policies, community infrastructure, what's in place to help the.
Share with people, that's really great. Share with people a little bit of the menu. I mean, even today, as we speak, this very moment, if someone is able to get out to the New Hallville area at Lincoln Bassett School, there's an event going on that you're involved with, still involved with vaccinations, COVID related and flu related. Susan mentioned food, breast cancer. So share a little bit of the menu. I want people to really see that this is you hear the term system approach a lot, but there are dots that we can see the connections between the dots. So just list some of the steak and potato issues that you're.
Yeah, so the event today is called Renew Hallville. It's right now. It started at 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's at the Learning Corridor on the corner of Shelton and Hazel. So one of our cornerstone programs that we have at CARE, one of the things we really would like to continue to do as we talk about community organizing and building partnerships is we need to ensure that there are many residents who are equipped and ready to have conversations about health equity, how health equity intersects with so many other issues in our lives. So we have a cornerstone program. We have a set of programs under health leadership programming. So we have New Haven Health Leaders and Community Research Fellows. New Haven Health Leaders is a program where residents can apply to take part. We usually take about 12 people per year, and they go through about 6 to 9 months, depending on the cohort of training, where we together learn about our community issues, social health, which is a trendy term in public health right now, which I can expound upon more if you'd like. Health disparities, the disparities that exist in our own communities, and then ways to act. So as part of our program, we ask the participants to create a project in their own community. So today's event, Renewville, is one of our health leaders, Roy, who has organized this, really blossomed into quite an exciting event today. As Tom mentioned, there's going to be vaccinations available for free, COVID vaccine. There's breast cancer awareness information, health information. There's a bunch of health screenings, blood pressure, visual, dental screening. There'll be yoga and other types of, course.
And what else is in your portfolio? I mean, I think you're related to this food issue and also related to cancer. So I mean, let's take another 20, 30 seconds so people can see how broad your scope is.
Yeah, so I've known and worked with Susan for several years now, because we collaborate with Witnesses to Hunger to focus on, again, taking a approach, looking at our food assistance program in New Haven and figuring out how to make them better. So we have a network called the Coordinated Food Assistance Network that CARE with several other partners helped to stand up, work closely with Witnesses on that. They have several people who serve. We work with the United Way and several of the food programs, Loaves and Fishes, to really take a look at our system, how we can improve. So again, food insecurity, access to healthy foods, chronic disease. That's the line that we're constantly trying to follow. We do a lot of work. We have a community research fellows program, which is similar to New Haven Health Leaders. And we did 2 years. Tom was in that. We did 2 cohorts of that program.
The standards were lower back then, but I'm glad that I was able to kind of slip in just right under the.
Well, it was a very successful program, and we have caught the attention of the Yale Cancer Center. So we have a cohort of local residents who are learning about research that takes place at the Yale Cancer and partnering with investigators at the cancer to provide input from a community expertise perspective to help guide the investigators in their work. So yeah, we really have an array. And again, it's all that component is about building a network of residents who are ready to engage in health related.
And just lastly, I mean, and we could do like 4 or 5 others, but I'm not going to continue the interrogation, but the maternal health.
Yes, through our REACH grant, which is focused on chronic disease prevention. And so it's under the same umbrella as this active transportation work that we're doing. We also have been breastfeeding in Black and Brown communities. So we have a task force, and a set of initiatives, again, working in partnership with WIC and folks from trying to figure out what are some of the barriers that Black and Brown communities are trying to move breastfeeding.
And I appreciate your saying that, and we'll spend the next 20, 30 minutes on the remaining minutes on active transit, because all of that, I mean, all that is related. You may not think of it, but to get to the store, to get to the club, the club, seriously, to get to the gym, to get to school, to get to work and not be hit by pedestrian traffic or by, well, actually, I mean, cars hitting you. But so, I mean, it's all so interconnected. And I think, Alicia, just share again the opportunity in late July for people to come out. Because I'm urging people to come out because they may think that active transit, this street planning is, oh, it's just boring. The city's going to do what it wants to do anyway. But I think the more people kind of come out and see and learn, they may have someone might come and say, you know what? I've had this eureka moment. I'm here and I have a eureka moment about what we should be doing. So it's an open platform for additional suggestions and additional input, because creativity, we have not maximized our creativity as a society, as a world for that matter. So, but we have an upcoming event in July, and to just remind people about that.
Yep. So again, at the end of July, we will have a public workshop, date, time, and location TBD. We're really hoping to have percent where community members will have the opportunity to the Safe Routes for All master plan for the city. So it's really a look at every street, intersection, sidewalk, with ways to improve them so that they're safer for walking, biking, rolling, taking them. And so people have the opportunity to provide their input directly into the plan, public workshop.
So important. Susan, any comments on what you've heard thus far? Because I have a few follow-ups I want to ask. But
well, I mean, the thing of it is in each neighborhood, you know, wherever you live in New Haven, you have a complaint about, I wish they'd fix this, you know, I wish they'd fix that. This is your time to come and put forth your ideas for changing things that you don't like in your neighborhood. I'm not saying everything will be addressed, but if somebody knows, that's the first step in getting something done, and making your voice heard for your community. If you want things to get better, there's no other way in order to put it out there and, you know, let the experts know.
Excellent. And just as a sidebar, everybody, I've been observing the recent campaign for mayor. As many people know, our current mayor, Justin Elliger, is running for re-election, and Karen Du Bois Walton is one of the prime contenders. But both of them have come out recently with a statement in support of the need for the streets to be safer from a transportation standpoint. And I was really intrigued with Mayor Elliger said one thing, then Karen said the same thing, but try to increase it. Well, we got to do more. So there's a nice competitive thing going on about, even when they agree on things, you know, can we even, who's going to do it better, or can we put more money into it? So I go there by just saying that the political arena, and Alicia, you referenced that the Board of Alders will be involved. The politics is whether you're going to go to a Board of Education meeting, a Board of Alders meetings, or go on Zoom. The city operation is going to affect you. So even how in terms of your garbage being picked up or the streets can be wide enough. So just for people to realize this is an opportunity, a real opportunity. Susan, you mentioned your uncle was Fred. I mean, not Fred. Was Fred Harris related to you?
Which one? I had an uncle, but he went. So how far back are you going here? There are a lot of Harris in New Haven, and
there are.
We're not all related.
Not all related. Okay.
But I did have an uncle, Frederick Harris. He went by Pete, but he was okay. To medical research.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's the one you're referring. But no, that was my father's side. But no, the uncle was my mother's brother, Robert Jackson.
Robert Jackson
was his name.
And he was involved with redevelopment agency?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, he worked for the redevelopment agency back in Fickley's administration. Now, don't ask me too much. I was only a child. I was a small child at the time.
Understood.
So,
You're only 16 now. But reason I wanted to reason I wanted to go there just for a second, and we'll move on, is that some folks know that New Haven was considered one of the first model cities in terms of 1960s money, and Alicia, you mentioned Mary Lee, but literally in terms of what was called urban redevelopment, some would call it black removal, some would now call it gentrification. These political movements, these ways of allocating funds, and the planning aspect, we always in the past have not been involved with as much as we can be involved with now. Now we can debate whether it's too little, too late, but nonetheless, the process continues every day. A process continues, so that's why I keep on harping on folks taking advantage of these upcoming opportunities. It's so important. Alicia, you mentioned that the Board of Alder people have a role to play. So, do they actually have veto power? Do we have to begin the politic and persuade our alders to kind of understand the importance of this, or are they on board? What's your sense at the moment?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of work to do to convince the Board of Alders why this is important. I think it's a challenging issue in a lot of ways. It might not seem like it on surface, but once you introduce politics, it gets pretty challenging. I think there's some mistrust, of course, among, between the larger community and City Hall really delivering on promises. We hear all sorts of promises. Whether or not they become reality is a whole other issue. And then, just internally at City Hall, it can be challenging because of these big bureaucratic institutions really deliver what people are looking for. There's a lot of barriers and messiness involved, and so I think a lot of people are pretty cynical about, rightly so. But what I would say to alders is that in 2020 we saw over 10 deaths, pedestrian deaths in New Haven. That was a pretty big increase for us. 2018 also had similar rates of, so the past few years we're seeing more pedestrian fatalities from people driving recklessly. Even just this in 2020, there were 4 deaths on El Agrasso Boulevard. Since I've lived in New Haven, people have been complaining about El Agrasso Boulevard and how unsafe it is. And that is a main thoroughfare. And if you even just look at, a couple of the main areas like where Legion and El Agrasso Boulevard and Chapel and trying to cross over to the park, it's just a death trap. So I think alders should be really motivated to make sure that these areas are improved and become safer, so we don't see as many pedestrian deaths. There was just an article released or a study that was reported in the Washington Post that a new analysis of deaths on U.S. roads, Black people killed in.
And repeat that again before we go into the explanation, because I also saw the article and shared it, but that just shocked me, and I was just so hesitant to even share it. So I had to be sure I rely upon the Washington Post, but I had to make sure that other people were saying this, because I did not want to believe it. But repeat that and then elaborate a little more, if you would.
Yeah. So a new analysis of deaths on U.S. roads found that Black people were killed in traffic crashes at a rate almost 25% higher than white people in recent years. A disparity that appears to have worsened during the coronavirus pandemic. So yeah, when I even think about
what is it? But on that article, if you have it in front of you, why does the article say that that's the case?
It says the reason for the spike in Black deaths is not noted in the federal report, but experts say that just as the virus itself spread more readily through color, the increase was probably a result of existing in communities. And even researchers have previously concluded that Black communities tend to be crisscrossed by more dangerous So Ella Grassa Boulevard is the perfect example. You know, that road intersects many Black communities, Black and Brown communities. And when, you know, every time I see a new fatality reported in the New Haven Independent, I haven't gone back to really analyze this, but I have noticed that a lot of those fatalities are taking place in our Black and Brown communities.
And Susan, just before I come to you, let's give a shout out. And I think, and I'm comfortable in using the word an affirmative shout out, not a denigration, to Doug Houseladen and his crew. I know Doug, and many of you know Doug, and I'll certainly criticize him up the yin yang off the record. But for the purposes of this show, he has been talk about Alicia and Susan. That from my standpoint, they have obviously been engaged, and not only engaged, committed, and wedded to this process, and it's laborious for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Doug has he has a vision around active transportation for the city, and I think that's one of the reasons why he was tapped by the Harp administration several years ago to lead the transportation department. His wealth of knowledge and active transportation, what other cities are doing, and what we could be doing in New Haven is really, you know, he has a broad range of expertise and ideas for how we can make improvements. And not only that, you know, he's also committed to equity issues. And so part of our REACH efforts, which is racial and ethnic approaches to community health, in this active transportation plan, part of our strategies under REACH, we have a big focus on race. And Doug is with that and has really supported efforts to that we're reaching into communities that might not typically be at the table to discuss these issues, or that we have good representation, hearing from all communities. He's been really committed to that.
Great. Susan?
That's as like I just found out when we went on the survey walk that Alicia mentioned, that, you know, right up the street from me going, you know, I live off Lake Street in Westville, and they're putting in a nature walk that I didn't know anything about it, right up the street from me, you know, going behind Valley Street and the Shooting Memorial, to, you know, integrate more walking tours, walking paths here in New Haven, especially on this side of town under West Rock. I always get them mixed up. And to, you know, walk along the creek there, you know, to have more hiking trails and more nature. And I said, wow, that was wonderful. But yeah, he's doing a lot for the city and working behind the scenes in this plan, which is really, you know, phenomenal if they can pull it off as they say they can. And he knows, as long as he helps me get my sidewalks here, he's fine with me.
We have about 6 minutes, and Susan, I appreciate your referencing the political the citizen pressures on. If you're a department head, there are roughly 125,000 people that want you to kind of give them concierge services, and so but that's why this thing in July, this opportunity in July and in the fall, because it'll only succeed if all of us are involved, or we want the success to be for all. Let me phrase it. The success will be exponentially increased in terms of that probability, more of us that are involved. And it will be messy, but nonetheless, it seems we're in a messy situation. So let's all be cleanup men and cleanup women, right? Absolutely. Alicia, let me come back to you. Any thoughts in terms of what we've discussed thus far, what we might have omitted or not mentioned?
Well, Susan just reminded me in mentioning the amazing new garden tribute victims of gun violence in New Haven. If you have not been there yet, please go. It's chilling and inspiring. And I'm so inspired by the women make their vision become reality. It's a really beautiful, peaceful place. And it's just reminding me, I think one of the other issues we really face in trying to talk about this work is when we talk about safe streets. A lot of people are concerned about gun violence. So that's first and foremost, and that is an issue that we're also committed to. And it can get a little tricky when we're talking about safe streets in terms of, you know, sidewalks and things like that, when people are really grappling with gun violence in their neighborhoods, especially this year.
Okay, all right. Is that one of your bill collectors, Alicia, calling in, or car maintenance, insurance? I mean, these robocalls are fantastic. But
Yeah, sorry about that.
no problem. It happens. We're in this interconnected society, this surveillance society in so many ways. But you're right, referencing, and even where you mentioned the memorial, that curve has a sign that kind of indicates how fast you're driving. And there's some people that now feel that they don't want that to happen, that they don't want those signs to be up. So the whole, what does it mean to be healthy and lively and safe and just to feel comfortable and not to harm one another? And then how do regulations and policies impact that? It's all also so connected. Um, Alicia, you have let's reference Tammy Chapman's role as well, because you're not doing this all by yourself, and there's roughly 20 or so staff people that work for CARE, or maybe even a little more. Let's give a shout out to Tammy and her function and her role, if you would.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Tammy couldn't be with us today because she's helping to support that Newhallville event. But she has been deeply engaged in this work. Tammy Chapman lives in Newhallville, and she's CARE's community engagement coordinator. And she has really been leading us through, you know, how to talk about and who to talk with in communities, particularly Black and Brown communities, their voices. So, you know, she's starting to have conversations with, well, she has been having community members and with alders to really understand what some of the issues are around not just, you know, making recommendations for streets, but how people are really feeling about having their voice heard, and trying to address some of the issues where people feel like their voices aren't heard, and how can we get beyond that.
And Susan and Alicia, let's kind of, we have another 3 or 4 minutes, and Harry will play the music, and that'll be our cue that we're being kicked off. But I always kind of push the envelope to maximize the time, and apologize for getting started late this morning a little bit. Let's end on the emotional, the psychological, even the psychiatric note that emotions do rule the world. I mean, we think that we can be we want to be cognitive and rational and objective. But your feelings about things and your attitude and your approach, that also influences how, not only how you see things, but how you decide to mobilize yourself, to use that expression. So if we could, if you guys would indulge me, I'd love to kind of have you share the next minute, 90 seconds or so for each of you, the impact, the importance of our emotional health, our physical health, our even our spiritual health, about it's just remaining civically engaged.
Well, I think it's,
go ahead, Susan.
I think it's a difference of when you get up in the morning, you get dressed to get ready to go, and you go out your door and you say, okay, I'm going to catch my bus and go on my merry way, instead of, God help me, can I get across the street? Because the cars won't stop. You press the crosswalk, that's the proper thing to do, and the cars don't stop. The bus stop doesn't stop where it's supposed to stop. So what do? You have to, jog to the next bus stop. It's all about peace of mind. We have, in this multiplex world that we deal in, we have this, that, the other thing, everything. But, to calmly get up and leave your house to begin your day, that should be a calming process in itself,
Alicia?
Yeah, I mean, I think Susan points out some really great points. Like, if I want everybody to feel safe walking, biking, taking the bus, and have a pleasurable experience, just trying to cross the road. It shouldn't be as stressful as it is. I love to ride my bike. I love to walk around New Haven, but not everybody feels comfortable. So how do we build streets that people feel comfortable at? Because I get so much joy out of riding my bike. Other people should be able to experience as well.
Share a little bit, Alicia, just as we wind down. I mean, you've already referenced where you lived, and so hopefully you won't have any stalkers out there after this show. But you referenced the area of the city that you live in. But you take, correct me if I'm wrong, but you ride your bike from that area all the way to Southern Connecticut State University, which for those of you that are listening about in the New Haven area, that's a long way to drive, not a long way to ride the bike, but also it's over bridges, it's highways, it's ridiculous but from my standpoint, but you do that.
Yeah, a lot of people feel like that's a crazy commute. It's part of my daily life now. So, well, not right now because we're still working remotely. But yeah, I live in the East Shore neighborhood, and I ride my bike to pass to Southern. It's only like 3 miles, or maybe it's 5 miles. And it is, a lot of people are afraid to bike that route. I have to go through the port because I want to avoid Forbes Avenue because Route 1. I have to go over the Tomlinson Bridge, which is super sketchy, but I go over the sidewalk and stay off the road there, even though you're technically not supposed to ride on the sidewalk. I feel pretty safe riding my bike, and that's an area. Once I get over the bridge, it's pretty smooth sailing through Worcester Square downtown and up into up over into the Southern campus. So once I get over the Tomlinson Bridge, it's a breeze for me. But I definitely understand why people feel like they can't bike in.
Well, you're a pioneer, I guess. Susan, somebody has to be the should I say masochist, Susan? I mean, I have a stationary bike. I'm not sure that qualifies. It's kind of dusty.
I give her much props. I give her much props.
I give her super props. I give her super. Alicia, Harry's going to play the music shortly, but reference, I want to jump to CDC because people may be thinking, why is the government even involved with that? And again, unfortunately, there's so much skepticism and just suspicion about the government's intentions. But the Center for Disease Control, I mean, they're kind of funding many of these efforts, and why? And so. This is a good thing from my standpoint, but some people are also going to say, well, what is the government's ulterior motive? What is their subversive moment? We have about 45 seconds.
Okay. So this, I know, especially over the past 1 to 2 years, which was not helped by the past presidential administration. There's been a lot of mistrust in CDC, COVID. But the CDC is really invested, quite literally. They spend billions of dollars. It's the Center for Disease Control. They're trying to prevent diseases from happening. And they really understand the issues. And they really understand the importance, and particularly the program that we're funded through REACH. They deeply understand the importance of community coalitions working together to improve health at the grassroots level. They're truly committed to that, and they're providing resources across the country.
Excellent. Ladies, thank you for providing your personal resources and your personal commitment and your personal prayers and putting your life on the line. Talk to you next time, and thanks so much.
Thank you, Tom.
Right.
Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you're going. Better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you're gonna be counting blessings. And
this is Harry Grove, and you're listening to WNHHLP 103.5 FM, New Haven.
Fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is my road. Let's camera action.